In an empire of limitless riches and power, it is not difficult to picture vast displays of wealth and fortune. But even amongst the richest of Roman citizens, there was one man who stood taller than most. And that man was Marcus Licinius Crassus, or as we'll call him, Crassus. Crassus was born into the gens Licinian family as the second of three sons in 115 BC. However, by 91 BC, he'd be one of the last remaining members of his family due to various displeasing circumstances. Not long after, Crassus, a supporter of Sulla, would be forced to flee to Hispania after the proscriptions of Lucius Cornelius Cinna, but not before he married his brother's widowed wife, Tetrula. Anyways, Crassus spent 3 years in Hispania, ultimately forming an undermanned legion of around 2,500 men, of whom he paid and used to extort funding from local municipalities. However, his visit to Hispania was abruptly halted when he received news of Cinna's death as a mutiny. Crassus played into this news and made the journey with his men from Hispania to the Roman province of Africa. However, due to disputes with Metellus Pius, a close ally of Sulla, Crassus and his men would embark on the longer journey to Greece to directly fight under Sulla himself. Which is exactly what they did, fighting in Sulla's civil war, most notably manning the legion guarding the right flank during the decisive battle of Colline Gate in 82 BC, which is also where Crassus made his first step to wealth. During the initial onslaught, Sulla's main fighting force was being crushed down their center line. However, Crassus and his legions were doing quite the opposite, decimating the attacking right flank, and later, at the request of Sulla, aiding the central forces themselves, which not only proved successful as a turning point in the battle, but directly influenced the later victory for Sulla. These actions put Crassus into a very advantageous position with Sulla, a position which certainly aided in his future title of Rome's richest man. Following the victory, Sulla held proscriptions of his own. However, this time, Crassus was on the opposite side of them. This allowed Crassus to purchase the properties of his enemies at mere pennies for their worth, an ability that he certainly used to his advantage, and one that began his spiral to wealth. Visually, this was a transformation of his wealth from roughly 30 tons of silver to over 229 tons, which held a value of around 200 million sestertii, or about half the entire revenue of the empire over the course of a year. However, Crassus had many other ways of amassing wealth, such as slave labor and silver mines, and some more unique ways of amassing wealth, such as purchasing burnt properties and those in the vicinity for very low costs, and then using the labor of slaves, who he purposely selected to have experience in architecture or building, to fix them and then selling them for a gain. Talk about a fixer-upper. Moreover, Crassus, noting the impact of fires, created Rome's first fire brigade of roughly 500 men, who he used to rush to the scenes of these fires before they did too much damage, and did, well, nothing. Crassus understood this flaw, and would offer desperate homeowners pennies, or rather quadrants, for their homes while they were burning. If they accepted his offers, they would put out the fire. If not, he would simply purchase the property later, after it fell. After reamassing his wealth and more, Crassus set his focus back into politics, and by 73 BC, Crassus would be elected as praetor, which would see him sent into a new conflict, the Third Servile War, a slave revolt which was led by Spartacus. The war was lengthy, which occurred over a vast geographical area, but one which ultimately ended in the favor of Crassus, following the decisive battle of the Salarius River, where Crassus would capture 6,000 slaves alive, who he would later crucify along the Via Appia, leaving them to rot as a sign to any future conspirators of revolt. Following this conflict, in 64 BC, Crassus would be named censor, where he would continue to spend and amass his wealth, such as his generous contributions to future Pontifex Maximus, Julius Caesar, actions which certainly aided in Caesar's respect for Crassus, and ultimately helped him become a part of the first triumvirate, an alliance between Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus. By 56 BC, Crassus would be named consul with Pompey once more, but this time he'd be issued the province of Syria exclusively for 5 years, a province of vast wealth that would have seen Crassus expanding his wealth to even more incomparable numbers. However, in an action of greed, Crassus would attempt to cross the Euphrates River in an effort to conquer Parthia. However, in an action of arrogance, Crassus decided to forego the much easier and welcome route through Armenia, and persisted in crossing the river, which would prove as a fatal misjudgment. Crassus and his army shortly after found themselves landlocked in a sparse desert after following misleading advice, and moreover, vastly misjudging the Parthians' fighting ability and style, which ultimately led to a disastrous Roman effort in battle. Following the failure, Crassus was prompted by his men to enter negotiations with the Parthians, and after realizing his situation, he inevitably agreed. However, following a misinterpreted meeting with the Parthians, a short-lived fight would commence, leaving the Roman guards and Crassus dead, marking the end of Rome's richest man and his subsequent thirst for wealth. Concluding so, the Parthian forces filled the mouth of Crassus with molten gold, mocking his thirst for wealth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for future videos.